Okay, hi, Will. This is my second attempt at giving you video analysis of this presentation. You're now up to 3 minutes and 8 seconds, so I'm going to be a little briefer, and here we go.
Hello, this is Will Sheldon. I'm doing my presentation on hydroxychloroquine and money problems associated with it on both the consumer end and the producer end.
As I may have said before, I see a professional looking slide. I see a unique topic, money. I like that. I've been seeing a lot of the same topics so far. And I do see the structure of hydroxychloroquine, which is always something a chemist looks for immediately, so great start.
So, first of all, as a medication, it is under the brand names Plaquenil and Hydroquin. And as of 2020 in the United States, it is around $25 monthly for a medication under a plan, or $37 for 200 milligram tablets taken twice a day.
And that sounds insanely cheap. So that would be out of pocket. That would be before any sort of insurance coverage, things like that. Hey, $25 is sometimes what people pay for a copay for a single treatment. So that's for an entire month. So it sounds like this stuff is, at least in my book, dirt cheap. The audio quality is a little bit on the low side, but I can hear you just fine.
So these two numbers translate to around the same amount. But as a drug, treating such diseases as it does, it is a fairly inexpensive
Yeah.
prescription.
hmm
Second of all, it's already highly available due to its usage in other diseases. So for COVID-19, it is clearly not a new.
Yeah, they've been optimizing the synthesis since like, I don't know, 1955. It went off patent a long time ago. They've got it down to a very quick synthesis, just a few steps. There's only one chiral center to worry about here, and it's drawn racemically, meaning that they don't even care what the mixture is here, so you don't have to get this chiral center correct. So the synthesis, very straightforward.
New thing that is being newly produced. It is already in production, but in the tests on COVID-19 cases, it has been fairly ineffective in its usual amount of 200 milligrams, and tests have gone up to around 800 milligrams in
800 milligrams is so much, but it's kind of like 4 times cheap is still pretty cheap here. So I wouldn't worry really about the cost, even if you have to take 800 milligrams. I would worry about side effects when you're bumping it up to taking nearly a gram of this stuff. It's like food.
400 milligrams. So obviously the prices would shift accordingly to twice as much or 4 times as much because of the increase in the amount of the drug. The synthesis, on the producer side, has been highly optimized because it is efficient at treating malaria, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and porphyria cutanea tarda.
That's a
Now, in
big
the
overall
malaria
yield.
outbreaks, it has been highly optimized because it was such a serious threat in impoverished nations, and it used to be commercially yielded at around 26%, but after its optimization, it has come to around
Nice,
78%
nice, nice.
in synthesis, which is much more financially viable for the companies. Now, the summary in the Beilstein Journal was very clear in its.
Because my last name includes such details, Germans always pronounce the second vowel of an EI combination, so Brielman is IE. Beilstein, in both of these EI combinations, is pronounced with the I pronunciation. Sorry, that's just a thing.
Change in the processes which it uses to synthesize the drug, and it has become much more optimized in that process by using.
Yeah, and when I make them publicly available, you can look at Thomas Gregory's evaluation. I think, was it Bobby Haig? Other people talked about the synthesis of hydroxychloroquine and how people have improved it over the years. But that's great. I like that you included that.
Catalysts and such. Now, the 26 to 78% yield, as they outline in the paper, it increased by 52%. And if it was financially viable to produce at 26%, it is clearly much more financially viable to produce it at 78%.
Well, not if you used a different method and you have more expensive reagents. It does not correlate that 3 times higher yield is 3 times cheaper. It all depends on what you're using and the cost of the reagents, things like that.
So clearly, the drug remains fairly inexpensive for its uses,
Yeah,
and its specific production numbers are not public, so I could not find exactly how much the production numbers went down
it's
for
fine.
the companies producing this. But
It's cheap.
obviously, an increase of 50% would be 52% would be much more. Would be a huge increase in
Okay.
viability for financial purposes.
I mean, my thoughts right now is if you compare remdesivir synthesis, which is a beast, 6 chiral centers, just insanely expensive reagents, and trying to scale that up, separating all sorts of stereoisomers, that is a real nightmare. Boy, if there was ever a stark comparison between a cheap, easy synthesis like HCQ and a challenging synthesis, expensive like remdesivir, it's a really striking example.
So, in conclusion, the cost of the consumer is relatively low, and the cost of production is streamlined more than now in the past. So, it is clearly much more. The money problems is not a problem for hydroxychloroquine. It's a very viable and streamlined drug that is public and is being produced in a streamlined fashion.
Okay, thanks for that presentation. I'll gather my thoughts, make a few comments about what I liked, what you could do to improve it, and what your grade is. Two things I liked were the technical nature of your presentation and the unique topic that you chose. So very nice job showing a video that's very easy to hear, very clear, one slide I like. Um, and you animated it throughout, which helps people to sort of follow the flow. And I also like the fact that you're talking about a unique topic, which is the money problems or lack thereof associated with hydroxychloroquine. Another thing I liked about your presentation is that there's some information here that I haven't seen in any of the other talks, what it costs for this stuff. $25 a month. That's a nice clean number. If it were broken down into where that comes from, that would be even more useful. And I think you said you made an attempt to do that, but it's not that easy. I get it. They do not like to reveal the details of that. But yeah, unique data there. One area I think primarily that could be improved in this presentation is the depth of the coverage. In other words, you have shown that it's cheap to make hydroxychloroquine, but frankly, that's about it. And for the last few minutes, you talk about the synthesis being improved could make it even cheaper, but there's not a lot there other than that. So I think that there's areas where you could have provided greater depth. As I alluded to before, comparing it to the nasty synthesis of remdesivir. Now, there's a very meaty topic where you show how challenging it is to synthesize these things. Focusing on this chiral center, if they had to get that stereochemistry right, wow, that would have increased the cost dramatically, and I wonder why they don't. It could be that both enantiomers are equally active, but that would be one topic where you could go into a little bit greater depth. And if it were me and I was saying to myself, well, yeah, 25 bucks a month, that's all I got, a little table that compares the monthly cost for medications of aspirin, hydroxychloroquine, morphine, AZT for AIDS, cancer treatments, right? And you could do a very useful table and maybe turn it into a chart that shows what sort of costs people are dealing with. You could even take it further and show how countries deal with such costs, how countries like France and Canada and others nationalize it and you don't pay a dime, how people like how countries like America may have people paying entirely out of pocket, and maybe even some other countries that might be of interest. So that's another area you could have branched into to provide more depth. In terms of scoring, we break it into 5 categories, so each worth 10 points. So is it at the college level? I give you a 9 out of 10 because predominantly it is. It's an interesting topic. It's not easy to find these costs, and you evaluated it. Also showing the optimizations for the synthesis and a source for that is something that people start doing when they're dealing with things at a higher level. So I like that. In terms of the inspirational nature as well as the fascinating nature of it, I gave you eights for both of it because although the initial topic is interesting and you do point out that it's cheap, it just kind of stops there. So I took off a couple points each for there. Not bullet pointed, absolutely full marks, 10 out of 10. A little bit short of 5 minutes, so 8 out of 10. The final score is we're losing 1, 3, 5, 7. So it's a 43 out of 50. Thank you, Will, for that interesting presentation.